Donna's got all of her 4th of July decorations up.
And it's so pretty.
I love my wife loving decorations. She's got a whole shed out there full of every season there is almost.
I know, I keep thinking I'm going to quit, but
I tell you something, I know I should have known it forever, but I was in our pantry the other day and I thought, my wife has a fetish for coffee cups. And so I came in there and told her that. She said, yes, I do, and don't you throw any of them away. But we have lots of coffee cups for our kids to inherit one day. So. Good morning, Esther. We're glad you're here. Esther and her husband's going to move to Spain, and I'm so sad, so sad. Yeah, it's exciting for them, though. But they're still here. And the good thing about the world, no matter where you're at, we can see each other FaceTime and talk. I talked to a lady in Australia last night for an hour, and to me, it's just amazing that we can do that, and it's really awesome. You know, young people, it's no big deal, but for us old folks, it's a big deal, real big deal. So we welcome you today. I noticed my Facebook thing's asking you to send stars, so that's not me asking you, that's them. And that's okay, but it always makes it like I'm asking you for that. But I appreciate all the stars that I get. I've got lots of stars in my crown now, so. But I just wanted to point out today, I finally got I know it's going to be backwards on for you guys, but I got my newest book published and it's been released and I've approved it. It's a Song of Solomon. And I've written it from a metaphysical understanding. And those of you that may not understand that, but the Song of Solomon with the Jews, they thought it was a very intimate book. They thought it was about a sexual relationship between a husband and a wife. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not, but they would not allow anybody to read it till they were 30 years old. Isn't that amazing? Yep, they would not. And so that went on for many, many years. And then when the redemptive view started, during Western evangelical Christianity, it was taught as a relationship between Jesus and the bride of Christ. And so that's how we taught it forever. But the real understanding, the metaphysical understanding, our spiritual understanding, the Shulamite represents our conscious awareness, our heart awareness, and our subconsciousness. And Solomon represents the spirit, or Father or God or whatever speaking to us. So that's how I wrote this book. So I highly encourage you to get it. Was a blessing to me to write it, and I'm excited to hear about what everybody thinks about it. So you can go to my Facebook page. I have links to my Lulu account, and it's available as a paperback book and also available as an ebook. So hope you get that. And then I'm working on the Book of Revelation now. I'm almost halfway through, and you're going to be shocked what you hear from that. It's Spirit's really speaking powerful today to people who will listen. So we're continuing our study on the book of John. We've been for a little while where the man that was born blind, as we see in here, it's the man that was born blind by religiosity. You know, in the Aramaic, when Jesus was talking to Nicodemus, and he asked him, how can a man enter into the kingdom of heaven? He wasn't talking about going to heaven, but experience righteousness, peace, and joy. Jesus said a man must be born again. So what happened is when they were born into this world, in a sense, they were born into religiosity. Would you agree with that? Particularly in our generation, but their generation, they were born into the religiosity of the Mosaic law. So religiosity is what made us blind. When we were born, like I talk about often, I believe when a child is born, I believe they're fully aware still of spirit. I believe they have memories like that. But sadly, they didn't have parents that were spiritually aware, and they were put in a religious system that was not spiritually aware, and then sent to Sunday school by well-meaning people that were not spiritually aware, and they blinded them to the light. Isn't that good? Isn't that good, Allie? But it's true. To me, that's a great way of explaining that, but it makes religious-minded people really angry. You know, and that's not what we're out to do. And so that's what we see here with this situation with this man. The Pharisees were very angry that Jesus did this. And so we're going to continue on that. So we closed last week where I said, this is the testimony, this blind man that was healed. It's a testimony of every awakened sacred self. You may not yet have the words that you need to articulate, but your transformation speaks louder than their traditions. And what is your transformation? I can't explain this to you, but it's given me more peace than I've ever had in my life. It's changing my life. And I've had a lot of people that I've talked to that I've mentored over for years that their children have rejected them, their church friends have rejected them, and so they kind of remain quiet, but then they begin to see something. Something's different about you, Mom. Something's different about you, Dad. What is it? You know, and then if they're really willing, you can say, do you really want to know? Because if you really want to know, I can tell you. And then you can talk about, I'm feeding on something that's bringing great peace to me. And it's the Logos of the Word. So that's where we ended this with. So we're going to start in John 9:13 and go through 16. They brought to the Pharisees him that was before was blind. And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said to them, he put clay upon my eyes, and I washed, and I do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God, because he keeps not the Sabbath. Others said, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And then there was a division among them. And so, of course, their Sabbath day, nobody could do anything. You literally could only walk so many feet, and that was it. If you passed that amount of walking, I mean, there were so many laws, it was ridiculous. So this is not a commentary on calendar days, but it's a spiritual conflict that we see going on here. A spiritual conflict between carnal awareness, law awareness, and the Logos of the Word. The Sabbath represents a rest from dead works, basically. But the Pharisees had turned it into a burden and put more and more works on the people. And so Jesus performing this work on the Sabbath represents spirit acting outside of the law, revealing this divine activity that's not limited by human-minded rules or human-minded awarenesses. The true Sabbath is not a day of a week, it's a state of being in alignment with your divine mind. And so many people think, well, I go to church every Sunday, I observe the Sabbath, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but you're not aligning with a divine mind, you're aligning with more of that which has hindered you and which holds you back, and that's the religious laws. So the religious leaders want to understand this process, but they're asking from sense awareness, not spirit. They are focused on method and not meaning. Does that make sense? And we've often, just like when I was writing and teaching in our recent past about the Jesus providing bread and fish for the people. Well, for a few minutes, I was looking for method. I was just because I really wanted to give y'all some real, man, this is going to be so awesome, and this is what you do, and this is what you do to make true supply show up. But all I saw is that he functioned with gratitude. That was it, gratitude. So gratitude comes from awareness, right? If you're not aware that you have all things that pertain to life and godliness, and you're not aware that when you'll get to this place where whatever is required for tomorrow will just be there, then you're not going to live with gratitude. You're always going to live with a sense of lack. And a sense of lack, they're not very thankful. They look at other people that have when they think they have not, and then they get jealous, and all that stuff kicks in. So this young man still new in his awareness, but he answers plainly. He does not yet speak from full revelation, but he speaks from experience and from transformation. And to me, that's the proof. If you're really feeding on the Logos, then you're experiencing peace. You're experiencing some things in your life that aren't just physical things, right? And then you begin to receive revelation, and you begin to have aha moments that, oh, this is what this means. And it changes you completely. And so the true Sabbath is not a day of a week again. This alignment is with revelation knowledge. So this shows that every spiritual awareness may lack spiritual theology, if you would, but it carries the fruit of truth. And when you hear truth, it rings true in your heart awareness. So the entire Bible, when it's read physically, it's all about method, right? You do this, you get that. You give your tithe, then God will bless you. You don't, then it'll be taken away from you. And there's always a method for something. There's a method how to stay saved. There's a method to be faithful to the church and all the things that you need to do. So in verse 16, the questions reveal the division between those who live by law and those who live in the beginning, and they begin to perceive spirit. Their Pharisees judged Jesus based on tradition. They did not observe, he was not observing their law as they defined it. So others began to question the system because the fruit of the Spirit is actually evident. They begin to see the fruit of the Spirit in Jesus. They see the love of Jesus, because that's what the fruit of the Spirit is. It's just love. Everything else that's listed, like, what is it, long-suffering, patience, kindness, those are attributes of love. If you don't love, you won't be kind. If you don't love, you won't be patient. We could go down that whole list. But others begin to question this. Even if it defies religious logic, they saw that he loved people, and they definitely didn't see that from the Pharisees at all. So awakening always creates tension. Always creates tension in other people's lives around you. The Logos divides, which is the spiritual creative activity, not to destroy, but to reveal what is spirit and what is method. And so a lot of my students out there, I'm proud to call them students, when they begin to hear truth, then family or their religious friends or religious leaders, there's a separation begin to take place. There's a little bit of tension there. I have friends that don't follow what I teach, and sometimes when I speak up when I maybe shouldn't speak up, you can sense its tension. It's almost like a Democrat and a Republican. When the other one says something about what they believe and the other one doesn't, then what does it do? It creates tension. Literally, sometimes hair goes up on the back of the neck. So it's the same thing with religion. So John 9:13-16 shows what happens when spiritual awakening confronts religious systems. The man's healing could not be denied, but it couldn't be explained the way they wanted it to be and filtered through the law. And so the system had no place for this indication, and that's what we use instead of miracle. It's an indication. What do you mean indication? It was an indication that Jesus was functioning out of his spiritual resources, out of the spiritual energy that was within him. So they didn't want anything that did not originate from the Mosaic framework. You had to earn whatever. You had to earn God's favor to receive things. So this is a pattern throughout time. When the Logos rises in an individual, those bound to the law will always question, they will always challenge, they will always resist. But also we have to understand that. And if it's causing them tension, then what we do is we just back up. They're not ready. They're not ready to hear yet. And if they ask you questions, like I tell people, the first thing you need to do is say, what do you believe about it? And if they say, I believe it, then say, well, then you don't need to know what I believe, whether I do believe or not. If it's working for you, then fine. Right. But if it ever gets where it's not working for you, come see me. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. So truth simply stands. We don't have to argue. They should be able to just see it in their life. I may not believe what Roy's teaching, but I can see that he has peace that I don't have, or whatever it is. So the man who once begged, he now speaks, and his transformation becomes his testimony. And as we go on, we're going to see that he became a mighty messenger with just that little understanding that he had. All right, so verse 17. They said to the blind man again, What do you say of him, that he hath opened your eyes? He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him and that had received his sight. And they asked, saying, Is this your son? So they didn't even believe that was their son. They believed that somebody snuck another person in. Who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but by what means he now sees, we know not. Or who opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him. He shall speak for himself. These words his parents spoke his parents because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed if any man did confess that he was a consecrated messenger, speaking of Jesus, he should be put out of the synagogue. Therefore said his parents, He is of age, ask him. That shows the fear that a lot of people have. That if they speak or if they follow, if you would, a comforter messenger, a consecrated messenger, whatever, they're afraid they're going to be put out. And I'm telling you, I have no shortage of the people on the internet that are afraid to like one of my posts. Literally like my posts. They have, some of them have unfriended me because they were worried that my post might show up on but they still contact me, some of them, and they still talk to me, but they're afraid because if they know, then their fellowship will reject them or whatever they do. You know, it's like the man that got up several years ago in his church in Ada, Oklahoma, not in his church, but he told his elders that he didn't know if he believed in rapture anymore. He said, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm just not sure if I believe. Well, they did what Pharisees do. They went to their leaders, told them. Next Sunday they came, they took his license and took his church away from him and fired him. That's what religion will do. And so I understand the fear there. But there has to become a time that you just say, you know what, I don't care. I'm going all the way. So the once blind man, now seeing through spiritual awareness, recognizes Jesus not as a magician, you know, or not even as a healer, but as a prophetic messenger. To call him prophet is to affirm that Jesus spoke from his divine mind. A prophet is somebody that declares the truth of the word of God. They don't prophesy, thus saith the Lord. They don't do words of knowledge like a lot of the church has taught, but they speak the word of God. I am a prophet. I have no problem saying that. I can explain the word of God with clarity to people. So the man's awareness is unfolding, and he's now beginning to speak from what he has touched in his being. He touched this awareness. I mean, physically, that was an amazing thing for him. He can see now. But the spiritual aspect of this is really, you can see in a lot of what he said, his awareness begins to open. The voice of Spirit begins to form in his words. And even before he has full understanding, he's beginning to speak and support what Jesus is doing. So the Pharisees, representing the voice of inherited consequences thinking, they refused to accept this transformation.
Can you repeat that? The Pharisees represented what?
The Pharisees representing the voice of inherited consequences thinking.
Voice of inherited
Consequences thinking. In other words, there's consequences for everything you do, and law-based perceptions, they refuse to accept this transformation. The denial is not about the man, it's about protecting the religious structure. And that's what religiosity is all about, is protecting this structure, protecting this teaching, this sermon. You know, I've been through several different levels of teaching out of court, and then redemptive view in the outer court, and all those views fought to protect that belief system. I talked to somebody the other day that they told their child that they did not believe that we were supposed to die. And they didn't believe that Jesus was died for our sins. Well, what do you think that did? It rocked their religious system. And whatever we say like this, it rocks people's, because they've got to protect. I believe this all my life. It becomes an idol in a sense almost. So the Pharisees, representing the voice of inherited consequences then, this denial is not about the man, it's about the religious system. If someone can be healed outside their system, then their control is threatened. You know, and awakening always disturbs the system of performance, always. They resist the idea of transformation that it can come from union with the divine mind, because they've always taught that it comes from works, from following rules. And laws always give the lawmaker power. You ever thought about that? Laws always give the lawmaker power. In our political system, we have, I guess, the House. Aren't they the one that makes the laws? And then the Senate approves them, whatever. And so they make these laws up. And the reason that they fight over them so much, and because they want their law to be in there because they want the power behind that. And the religious system's the same way. The financial system's the same way. They all have some kind of law that they can control us. I would say even the medical industry, their law is if you take this medicine, you're going to be okay. If you don't, you won't. So it produces fear. It's all the same thing. So the man's parents confirmed that the facts, but they stopped short of affirming the truth. The fact is he was my son. He was born blind. Now he can see. but they're afraid of being separated from the assembly if they agree with what happened. Which metaphysically represents the loss of identity rooted in external belongings or external relationships. I don't want to lose my denomination. I don't want to lose my fellowship with my brethren, whatever it is. And so they say, he's of age, ask him. This response reveals their awareness is still bound by fear of exclusion. And so they're clinging to safety rather than stepping into truth. And that is so sad. And I see that. I'm sure you guys see that. They like the safety of their denomination. And even though there's struggles, there's unanswered questions, they're willing to stay there because it's just what they've been used to all their life. And they can't imagine that there's anything else.
The rejection is hard.
The rejection is very hard. We've been through it. Y'all have been through it. I'm sure every one of you, that if you've been raised in a religious system for a time and you leave it for no matter what reason, it always seems to be rejection. I've never seen a person that left because they didn't believe a system's belief system, that system blessed them and honored them and let them go.
Of course. Yeah.
So they're clinging to safety, and many today remain silent because they lack belief, because they fear the consequences of leaving the system. Again, families or whatever. But I'm often asked, what church do you go to? I'm often asked, what denomination are you? And I'm often asked, what do you teach? That one just blows my mind. Somebody will ask me, what do I do? I'm a preacher, I'm a pastor, I'm a teacher. Well, what do you teach? Well, what do you mean, what do I teach? We should all be teaching the same thing, but the truth is we're not. We're not. And so those who ask those questions are wanting to know my identity. My identity. What do I identify as? And if it's different than theirs, then rejection can take over very quick. So the synagogue, they would put a consecration messenger out of that system, out of the outer religion, an institution that's governed by rules and recognitions and rituals. They want to put them out. But to be put out is to lose social and spiritual approval, and there's nothing wrong with that, because their spiritual approval is a lower understanding. But this fear exposes their religion. It punishes the awakening that it can control people. Right? I told y'all before, I was told one time, I don't care what Holy Spirit tells you, you don't say nothing without talking to me first. So when I became spiritually more aware, then that pastor didn't like that, because that pastor did not have that understanding. And that was just the redemptive view. When I first met Brother Garner, I started teaching, the first thing I taught was Isaiah 11, the restoration of the remnant, and then I taught 6 steps of the throne, and the people were eating it up, but the pastor had no understanding of that, so it got shut down. And that's what this does to people. So they defer, these parents, they defer to their son, which is symbolic. He now stands as one who can speak for himself. And that's what we all have to get to. After a while, people need to quit saying, my pastor said this, Dr. Roy says this, Kay Fairchild says this, and they need to say, you know what? I've learned this from them, but now I can tell you because I know it's real, and I can speak it myself. So he's no longer dependent on their covering. He's no longer dependent on their permission. Many times I've had people say, well, did the church that you grow up in teach this? Did your seminary school teach this? It's almost like I need to have permission from my seminary school to grow in greater knowledge. So he's no longer dependent on that, and he will declare what has happened because his awareness has been touched by the Logos, and no one can argue with the fruit of that touch. And so I say, it doesn't matter to me what you think about it. I know what I've heard. I know what I feel. I've been questioned before by people that say they're atheists and they do not believe in God, and wanted me to prove there is a God. And I said, I don't have to prove that to you. I know that there is spirit, there's essence. I no longer believe it's a physical God out there on a throne somewhere in heaven, but I believe it's real. I discussed it with some people the other day. It's real. It's essence. It's energy. It's power. It's intelligent.
Yes.
And more than that, it gives me peace.
Yes, it does.
A peace that nothing in the world can give me at all.
That's right.
And so this questioning and conversation of the Pharisees reveals tension between newly awakened people and the old system of control, and the healed man stands as a symbol of those who are beginning to see while surrounded by voices demanding explanations. And part of that explanation, and I get it a lot, and I understand with people that I'm mentoring newly, there's a whole lot of questions. Well, what about this? What about that? What about that? They're still going, and that's okay, but there has to come a time that you stop that. Well, what about this verse? Well, what about that verse? And you begin to study. Paul told Timothy, a very young man, 14 years old, that was a pastor of the church, and he told him, and he had messed up. He had brought in educated teachers that were not spiritually attuned. A lot of things happened, and the church deteriorated tremendously. And then Paul came back and said, you can still do this, but you got to remember, a workman, in other words, a study of the word, needs to study himself to show himself that he's approved of God. You don't need to go to religious-minded people to tell you what God thinks about you. That's how I paraphrase that. You need to listen to the Spirit within inside of you. If you need somebody to help you, find a comforter messenger that knows the truth. They'll immediately tell you, you are holy. You are holy. So he begins to speak, not just for himself, but as a witness of what happens when the Logos stirs this dust of carnal perception and awakens it to this eternal light that's within inside of them. And everybody has the light inside of them. That's why many times, Allie, as you've studied, and Stephen, as you studied these things that y'all study, I'm sure you said, I've known this already. You ever had that experience where you said, I already knew this? I knew this all my life, because it's in your divine mind. It's already there. So the next verse, verse 23, therefore said his parents, he is of age, ask him. Then again they called the man that was blind and said unto him, give God the praise. See, they didn't want to give credit to Jesus for doing this. He said, give God the praise, because we know this man is a sinner. He answered and said, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, and now I see. Then they said to him again, what did he do to thee? I don't like this Elizabethan language. I need to change it all. He opened thine eyes, and he answered them, I have told you already, and you did not hear. Wherefore would you hear it again? Will you also be his disciples? That really made him mad, And so he is of age, ask him. This statement spoken by the parents of this once blind man reveals a deeper spiritual condition. In other words, I think they were saying he knows more than we know. He has more understanding than we have. Ask him. So though they had seen the transformation of the Son, their awareness remained rooted in their fear and rooted in their religiosity. So they delayed responsibility not out of faith in his maturity, but from a desire to avoid rejection from this system. And that's what a lot of people, again, do many times when we're asked questions we don't want to answer. How about, what was it somebody told me the other day? They were just asking, who are you feeding from? Who are you listening to? And they were afraid to tell them. And I understand it's the same kind of situation. So their words reflect a spiritual hesitancy and awareness still governed by external law and inward knowing. And so give God the praise. We know this man as a sinner. This is the voice of the old religious system demanding allegiance to the concept of God. And what do we do from the redemptive view? We want to give Jesus the praise. I remember when I first started teaching what Brother Garner taught me at our church, I would always say, it's not me doing it, because I would say we can heal people, we can do these things that Jesus did, but I would always say it's not me doing it, it's Jesus doing it. Because out of fear, because that's what we believed. It's always Jesus. We prayed to Jesus all of our life to heal us, to bless us, or whatever. And so the same thing, it's the same as that. So the Pharisees could not acknowledge this awakening take place because it did not come from their sanctioned order. Give God the credit to our idea of God, if you would. That's what it was. Not to this messenger who operates outside of our system. So their labeling of Jesus as a sinner reveals their blindness to the creative spiritual activity of the divine mind that was actually working in Jesus. And that's the eek of the ecclesia. Anybody remember what eek means?
The church.
Huh?
The church.
It's the place where movement and action takes place. Spiritual movement and action takes place. So at that time,
I taught you that.
huh?
I taught you that.
You did teach me that. So in this time where Jesus was, he was the only one where that was taking place at all, which is really sad. So the man there question is not concerned with the doctrinal labels or religious debates. He's speaking from his inward transformation. He may not have all the knowledge or the language, but he had the fruit. And when he had the fruit, it produced clarity, it produced perception, and it produced boldness. I mean, if it would be me, I would say, how dumb are you? I was blind, and the man put clay and told me, and spit, and told me to go bathe in the river, and I can see. I mean, what else do you have to ask?
What's wrong?
But they were so blind. It wasn't, I don't believe it was so much that they didn't believe that Jesus did it. They just didn't want to give him credit for it. I always believe that they knew he was the consecrated messenger they were waiting for. They were waiting. They enjoyed their power so much that they were not willing. So no matter how good a person's intentions are to help the world, the controllers never want to let go. They never. And they speak ill of them, and they want to destroy them. So this person no longer argues over rules. He testifies of what has occurred within, and this is the emergence of spiritual vision begin to take place, one that no longer needs external permission. I don't need my colleges that I went to support me or to promote me. I don't need other people. All I need is to teach the truth, and those that are hungry for the truth will find the truth. It will. So, still clinging to these the Pharisees keep asking the questions. Not because they seek understanding, but because they cannot control what they cannot explain. And they want to get something to trip Jesus up on. They're looking for a technique. They're looking for a formula, something that fits within their religious framework. But true spiritual awakening, it's not mechanical, it's relational. It's love. It's love without a cause. It's the unfolding of remembrance, if you would, not the results of performance. The question reveals this frustration. Truth has bypassed the system. And that's why Jesus said the truth will make you free. The not concealed word will cause you to experience your total freedom in who you are. And so the Pharisaical religious system was the concealed word. And the systems that go by the surface level of the Bible today, that's the concealed word. So this is the moment that the man moves from gratitude to authority. No longer intimidated, he boldly questions their sincerity. He's no longer the object of pity. He's become the teacher. Isn't that cool? Metaphysically, this is a shift from being a receiver of truth to a revealer of truth. And I remember Brother Garner telling me years ago in the Redemptive View, he said, Roy, it's time for you to feed for other people now, not for yourself. In other words, I've received that teaching on the Redemptive View, and now it's time for me to feed for other people. And so his awareness was matured. His voice carries this power of inner knowing. Have you ever talked to people about a subject and you could trust them because you knew they knew? Whether it be about cars or your motor or your house, whatever it is, you knew that they knew what they were talking about. Well, his awareness was matured like their awareness was. So his voice carries this power of inner knowing, and he no longer seeks validation from their hierarchy. He offers them an invitation to join his awareness. And so John 9:23 through 27 unveils this tension between rising awareness and between religious form. It's in this story, this man's eyes are open. He now stands firm, while others, including his own parents, were bound by fear and by approval. I don't know how much your mom has taught you before you came here, but what you've learned so far, has it helped you stand more firm in who you are and what you believe? The more truth you hear, the more it helps you. No matter what people around you say, you just know that you know. And that doesn't mean you have to shout out and say anything, but you don't let it get you out of your seat. And the seat is a place of rest, a rest with Father. There's nothing anybody can say to him anymore that would cause me to realize that I need to do something to please God. And most of my religious life, that's what I had to do. I was always thinking I need to do something. I need to do something more. I need to give more money. I always felt bad because I couldn't give 10% of my offering when we were raising our children, but we had to pay our bills. You know, we had to do all that, but I felt bad about it. I tried to give. We were givers, and we gave, but I felt bad about that. I always felt like I wasn't doing enough, although I was doing everything the religious system told me to do. But that message that came always made you feel less than. But this, the Logos, I'm at perfect rest. And I know you are too. So his spiritual authority is not earned through law then. It is birthed through awakening. This is the journey for all, from blindness to sight to boldness, from silence to testimony, to becoming a spiritual voice, where you can speak the truth yourself. So now, what time is it? Okay, so now we see this man born blind, but now sees. He becomes powerful. He becomes the revealing voice. So in verse 28, then they detested him and said, you are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciple. Isn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. You're a Pentecostal holiness, but I'm a Baptist. Right. Or we're Church of Christ, and you're this. I'm Catholic. You know, the list goes on, because that's all division. I know. If they're worshiping the same God, and they're studying the same Jesus, they should all be speaking the same thing. But there's always has to be division, because that one division creates control. Yes. And we can look at a lot of people in the world, individual people that are leaders of countries, and they want to lead the whole world. Right? It's the same thing. Like farmers. I want my land, and I want the guy's land next to me. Not Carl, though. But it's kind of like that. It's kind of a system that's built up inside of people. So he said, we know that God spoke unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from where he is. Well, they don't know that God spoke to Moses.
How would they know that?
They wouldn't know that. They have all those writings, and the original writings supposedly that Moses wrote were destroyed. And then I believe it was Ezra or Ezra, A-S-R-A-S, something like that, said that God downloaded all that to him, and he rewrote every bit of it. The 5 books of the Bible. So they didn't know that. So he says, let me get where I'm at, Moses. For this fellow we know not from where he is. This man answered then, and said unto them, why herein is it marvelous thing to you, that you know not from where he came, and yet he has opened my eyes? In other words, why isn't this marvelous to you? Now we know that God heareth not the sinful. This is the young man speaking this. He's preaching to him. But if any man be a worshiper of God and doth his will to him, he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened anyone's eyes that was once blind? If this man were not of God, how could he do this? Amen. How could he do anything? So his one-time experience empowered him to become a powerful messenger. Never studied anything, but he had an experience. Yes. And see, this needs to become experiential in our lives. Mm-hmm. We need to experience what we believe and what we know. So the Pharisees detested him, reveals the reaction of the old religious system when its authority is threatened. The Pharisees, unable to silence a man, now they turn to mockery. They turn to separation. And family, this happens all the time in our world. It happens in religious systems when a minister in that system begins to waken up and receive more truth, and they decide they need to be, they're called out, and that system begins to speak against them. A seminary school that the guy became a professor in and taught and everything, and had a greater awakening. Next thing you know, he's cast out, he's spoken against, all of his classes are taken away, his picture, his name's taken off the page. It happens all kinds of ways. It's the same thing that's gone on year after year for thousands of years, and it's got to stop. And so Moses' disciples, they cling to the law. They cling to the letter. They cling to the performance-based identity of doing to be. So metaphysically, this is the voice of the old awareness saying, we follow form, not spirit. I don't care what Holy Spirit said to you. You don't say nothing until you talk to me, and it's got to line up with what I believe. Right? And so we follow rules, not revelation. So they speak not from spiritual understanding, but in inherited consequence thinking that reveres the past over truth. And I understand. The past is hard to let go of. I mean, I sat in a church for 38 years, out of court teaching. Donna first, and then me, began to question that we were being taught. We just didn't think we were being taught the Bible at all. And then we came out, and we met Brother Garner, and we learned the redemptive view, and it was the greatest thing we'd ever heard in our life. But then there came a time that we realized that something was wrong there. Not with Brother Garner, not with the teachers, but the message. The message was off. And then we began to understand that penal substitution was not a true thing. But it was hard to come out of that. Very hard. But we had to do it on precept upon precept. Yes?
Have you ever heard of the term cognitive dissonance?
I've heard of it.
So cognitive dissonance is when your mind rejects evidence of something that was shadowed.
Your mind rejects evidence.
Rejects. Even though it's seeing evidence, your mind rejects it because it would shatter everything you've ever known. And that's what's happening in our world right now, is because the people are, it's like they're seeing the miracles, but they can't afford to believe it. They're seeing the truth, but in religion, they can't afford to believe it because it will force them to let go of the system.
Right.
And the system has become way more important than spirit at this time.
Yes.
So it's making me think of that. Like there's an actual term psychologically for what that is, and that's what we're seeing everywhere. People they can't afford to release it and let go.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, it would cause them, just like the Pharisees in this story, it would cause these pastors and these teachers and all of these leaders and anyone to have to literally let go of their ego, their dogma. And what I think of the Pharisees, it totally represents a state of consciousness, which is what you're saying.
Right.
It's just, that's all it's showing us is like it's your conscious. You have to let go of the system and the dogma and let yourself follow the spirit.
Right.
And like I was just telling Stephen, and then you just said it, it's like we need to have a felt experience. It's no more about the dogma. It's a felt experience.
Felt. Like
yes.
feel, felt, found.
Yes,
Yes.
a felt experience as opposed to...
So I can say, I know how I feel about
Yes.
this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's good.
Aha moments.
Yes,
Aha moments.
definitely.
That's
And see, the thing is, honey, is we were not taught what spirit was. We were taught the Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So we were taught that Holy Spirit is something out there, and the only thing in the charismatic field that we could get the Holy Spirit and we would talk in tongues. But we were never taught about the Spirit of truth. We were never taught about the divine mind. We never were taught that God is energy, anything God. So it was so physical that there was no spiritual understanding whatsoever. And we thought we were spiritual giants. I mean, we had people in the church that we said, "Well, those people are really spiritual giants." Well, no, they weren't. They were logos. So that is good, and it is hard to let go of. Very hard. So what we need to do is get past that allegiance to the law, to tradition, rejecting anything that comes through that channel, and realize that we're after spiritual truth. And religion said if it doesn't come through our doctrine, then you cannot receive that, and you cannot teach that. So religiosity produces blindness, if you would, of institutional awareness. It cannot recognize the voice of spirit. They could not comprehend that because Jesus didn't come through their ranks. Or you're not part of our system. So the awakened man speaks with clarity. He points out the contradictions. Those who claim spiritual authority cannot discern that source. And yet, there's transformation right there in front of their face. It's there. He's now confronting their blindness, not his blindness, but their blindness. The voice of new awareness is exposing this limitation of the religious system. Transformation cannot be denied, though. So the man is speaking from his current level of understanding, still using this inherited language, but he's pointing towards a higher truth. He equates being heard by God or the Father with alignment with divine intention. While he uses the word sinful, he's beginning to realize that what matters is not the law, but union. That all people are one with Father, all people are one with Spirit. He is beginning to experience this vibrational alignment in his life. So when our lives form from awareness of oneness expresses that union, the flow of Spirit is unhindered then, and Spirit responds not to behavior, but to awareness. So it's not about a person's behavior. So we don't have to go out and try to stop people from drinking and cussing and smoking and eating too much ice cream. We talk to people about their awareness. You know, I think more doctors need to do that, about their awareness. What is it that's making you desire things that's not good for your body? What, not the food. It's not saying stop eating that kind of food. What is it that you're lacking in your awareness, that you're not satisfied, and so you're always looking for something else? Remember, I've told y'all many times about, you know, I would come in here and turn the TV on, and there's nothing there I want to watch. I flip through all the channels, and then I'd go to the refrigerator thinking maybe I'm hungry. There's nothing there. Maybe like Donna goes and looks for a book she wants to read, but yet nothing satisfied. Well, usually that's a meaning that you're lacking spiritual nourishment. You might need to go feed on or sit and meditate or whatever, because literally Spirit responds to Spirit, if you would. The more you feed yourself Spirit, the more Spirit becomes powerful in your life. The more the voice of Spirit becomes louder in your life. Because you can't hear Spirit speaking to you when all the clutter is going on out in the world. When most of your time is in what the world offers you, you're really cut off, in a sense, to hearing the voice of Spirit. And that's why, like Allie teaches, and Stephen and Natasha and other people, they teach people to be calm and quiet and relax. And I like how Allie, one of these days I'm going to come get one of those beds and let you do your sound bath with me too. I think that'd be awesome to lay in a air mattress and float in the water while she's doing sound bath. And she has those sessions that she does. Are you going to be starting those again?
I'm trying to. I'm looking for people that host them.
To host them?
It's not on the pool.
No, because you need that inside pool.
I'm supposed to have one in a few weeks.
So here, John 9:28-33 reveals this picture of the sacred self rising out of inherited belief systems. That's the biggest struggle, is rising out of an inherited belief system that we grew up with all of our life. It was good enough for mama, good enough for grandma, it's good enough for me. All my friends believe this way. Well, do you want to believe like the world believes, the masses believe? I don't. The masses are always wrong. The crowd's always wrong. The most holy place understanding, it's usually a small crowd. But in the age that we're in, it's getting larger and larger and larger. And they don't fit in what we might think they should. They no longer fit in religious traditions. They no longer fit in church buildings so much, unless that church is led by a comforter, messenger, teachers. And so they have become a revealer of light, a voice of awareness, a student for self no longer. They're not studying for themselves, but they're studying for other people. They become consecrated messengers, and yes, they become logos whisperers. I like that. A student of truth. The voice that once whispers now roars with certainty. I was blind, now I see. I see more than you ever taught me. He was talking to the Pharisees. And so they, whoever they are, have become logos whisperers, but with a loud voice that can be heard all the way out in the outer court. In the old Outlook Perception books, we read of the cherubims. And I've told you what they are. They're people of blessings, right? They're people of blessings. They had wings that could be heard all the way out. The allegorical meaning of wings are always voices. Always voices.
Angels.
Voices. And voices that can be heard. Yeah, wings. All through the Bible, it talks about the wings of the cherubim. They're voices of the cherubim. They're voices of people that will bless you. They're the voices of comforter messengers. So I will wait next week we will go to Ezekiel 10:15, and I'll read this to you, and then we'll talk more about this, and we'll continue our lesson. So any other comments or questions before I close?
I think it's important to remember that the guy was the blindness, in my opinion. Obviously, we know that the blindness represented awareness, right? A
Right.
state of awareness. But I think there's another way for us to look at this as suffering, that it doesn't always have to be this negative thing happening to you, that it can be a gateway for higher understanding and higher awareness, and it can be almost like an initiation of a new, like a rebirth in your life, right?
That's what the blind man here did.
Right.
Went through, yeah.
And so it's like, I think that that's something else that Jesus was showing, is that we can use these perceived suffering or the perceived lack in our life, like lack of sight, and realize that like there is just a shift in your awareness, in your consciousness, in your understanding of what's going on, that you can alchemize that and turn that into a higher understanding, a higher awareness. Like there's a lady that I follow online, her name's Blue, BLU, and she's losing her hearing, and she's using this to tap into other strengths in her life, other, spiritual strengths. And I just think that that's a great thing to remember, is even though things happen, it's not to say blindness is wrong or blindness shouldn't be here, but you can use these things that you're suffering from and shift your perspective and turn it into something powerful and positive and higher, deeper understanding.
Right.
Doesn't change that it happened, but you can use this for good. You can turn it into something, and you can allow your awareness and your connection to God to change that into something good.
That's true. And the truth is, no matter what awareness you're in, it doesn't mean you're a bad person
Right.
at all. I mean, the outer court, holy place, most holy place was all in the tabernacle of Moses.
Right.
We are the tabernacle of God. We are the dwelling of God. So they're all, every person, world without end, is the image and the temple of God.
Yeah.
And they're perfect and they're holy. And so all this is about is correcting these awarenesses and showing people that in Western evangelical Christianity, there are three types of awareness. And I'm sure you can find that in Buddhism and everywhere else.
Yeah.
There's probably different awarenesses of people.
And I think it's really important to not forget that Jesus he didn't go to the Pharisees. He didn't go to, if he would have touched one of them and healed an ailment that they had, or their family member,
Yeah.
maybe they would have been, they would have believed more, or they would have been more changed. But he always used the simple and the underdogs and you know what I mean? Like,
right.
You don't have to be high up. You don't have to have your awareness to know that you can be touched, and you are touched and seen by the divine.
Right.
You don't it's like, I think that's just a beautiful picture all throughout the Bible.
Right. It is. He went to them. His whole purpose was to go to them because they were the leaders. But he went at 12 years old, so brilliant they couldn't take the light.
Right.
And so they rejected him.
Yeah.
So that's why he left, and he went and learned under other people and taught other people. Then he came back as an adult at 30, and he sought to teach them, but they still wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And that's why he had to leave.
Yeah.
So thank you. Very good. Well, thank you for watching us. And those that have just come on, I have released my book on the Song of Solomon, The Metaphysical Understanding. I encourage you to get it. It will be something like you've never read before. And you can go to my Facebook page and find the link on it. And I hope it blesses you a lot. And we will see you next week. God bless you. Thank you.
America.